So you found out that your pet has eaten something that they really shouldn't have, something potentially poisonous, and making them vomit at home may appear to be the obvious first aid step to take. And in many cases, this is the step to take. But in some situations, this may actually be very dangerous and cause more harm than good, which I'll discuss towards the end of this video. So make sure you stick around for that. Now, all that being said, attempting to make your pet vomit may be the best or only option if you're several hours away from the nearest veterinarian or unable to access veterinary care for whatever reason. And before you make them vomit, there's a couple of important steps to take. The first thing is to confirm that what you suspect they have actually eaten is dangerous and of a dangerous amount. The second step is to make sure that you don't make the situation worse by making them vomit. And all this means is that you should call your veterinarian or a local pet poison helpline, and I'll leave some numbers in the description down below to make sure that you're receiving the correct information from the very beginning. And when it comes to the supplies you're going to need to make your pet vomit, the first one is hydrogen peroxide. So this needs to be a 3% hydrogen peroxide. It does come in more concentrated forms, but the 3%, this can be bought from most pharmacies, health shops, and supermarkets. It's important that it's fresh, so it's going to be bubbly when it's not expired. But the reason that we need the 3% and not 10%, which is the other one that's commonly available, is that the hydrogen peroxide, it works by irritating the lining of the stomach, which then induces that vomiting. And use of stronger concentrations or other inappropriate use can actually result in severe injuries, illness, and even death in extreme situations. Now, the next thing you're going to need is a dosing syringe. So that's going to vary depending on the size of your dog. So, you know, we've got a 3 ml syringe here, a 10 ml syringe for a bigger dog, and a really big dog, you might even need a bigger one, but get an appropriate size syringe. It's much easier than dealing with teaspoons or other forms of measurement. So that said, the dose of hydrogen peroxide is 5 ml per 10 pound body weight, which is approximately 1 ml per kilogram. For our large breed dogs, though, we give a maximum dose of 50 ml. So it doesn't matter if they're bigger than that, kind of, if you work out on a per kilo per pound basis, 50 ml is the maximum dose that we're going to be giving our large breed dogs. And so once you've got your dog's weight and you've calculated that dose of hydrogen peroxide they need, I'd actually recommend that you write that on the bottle so that it's there in your first aid cabinet and you're not trying to kind of rush around and do some calculations when really time is of the essence. Once you've drawn up that dose, then hydrogen peroxide, it can be administered directly into the mouth, so just squirting that syringe into their mouth. Or if that's proving difficult, it can be mixed with some milk, some peanut butter that doesn't contain xylitol, or some low sodium chicken or beef broth or something like that, just to entice voluntary ingestion to get your pet to eat it willingly. Now, try not to use too much food because that can reduce the efficiency of the hydrogen peroxide, and if possible, it's best to just squirt it straight with a syringe. Now, if this initial treatment doesn't result in vomiting, you can repeat that same dose again 15 minutes later. If this still doesn't work, then don't give more. It's not going to work for your pet. They really need to seek veterinary attention. So that's how to make your pet sick, but there are a couple of key considerations that it is important that you know about. And the first of these is that it can actually be pretty difficult to make your pet vomit with what you have available to you. So, you know, if you've got a cat, making them vomit is really hard enough at the veterinary clinic, even with all the drugs that are available at my disposal. So at home, it is nearly impossible. The hydrogen peroxide kind of technique that I've just spoken about is actually very rarely effective in cats, just because they have different brain receptors compared to dogs, and really most likely it results in severe foaming and drooling at the mouth, and your cat's going to absolutely hate it. Hydrogen peroxide, it's also much more likely to cause gastritis, inflammation of the stomach, or even hemorrhagic gastritis, so causing bleeding as well in cats compared to dogs. Now, you might read about or know about some other solutions, kind of DIY vomiting solutions for our dogs and cats. They can be incredibly unreliable. They're even worse than the hydrogen peroxide, and they can actually cause some really nasty problems in their own right. So here I'm thinking about washing soda crystals, which are commonly switched with caustic soda, which causes horrendous burning. Salt is another one that I hear about and read about. Really is very seldomly effective and can lead to actually salt toxicity, which is potentially fatal in its own right. The symptoms that can develop in that 30-minute delay may mean that your vet is not able to induce vomiting, and I'll come on to that in just a little bit, but it may also mean that they're not able to treat them as they might otherwise have wished. And that toxicity may also have progressed to a level that just compromises the ability of your vet to successfully treat them for that poisoning in the first place, meaning that their hospital stay is going to be more expensive, or it's more likely to result in a fatality. And then just quickly, if you do want to be prepared for any emergency, poisoning or otherwise, then you owe it to your pet to actually check out my poisoning and first aid course, which I'm currently producing, and I'll leave a link down in the description below, because knowing the action, the first aid action to take at home when an emergency strikes really can make the difference between life and death for your family member. Well, I've already touched on the fact that some substances claimed to make your pet vomit can actually cause more harm than good. So that is a really real risk. But there's also plenty of things out there that our pets may have eaten which can cause harm if we attempt to make them vomit and if they're brought back up through that esophagus. The esophagus, kind of the food pipe between your throat and the stomach, is really sensitive to certain substances. And so things like caustic substances, petrochemicals, hydrocarbons, or sharp objects like fish hooks and bones, really, if they've made it down into that stomach, they're going to cause twice the amount of damage if we try and bring them back up out of the mouth by making your pet vomit. So caustic substances, we're thinking of things like bleach, I guess is the most common one here. It could be like a chewed up battery or something like that. Petrochemicals, clearly, petrol, diesel, gas, and the hydrocarbons included in that. And then fish hooks is a really big one. I live down by the coast and by some fishing lakes as well, and often we'll get dogs that have kind of come across a hook with a little bit of bait left on it and they've swallowed that down. So we never make these guys vomit. Also, if a cat or a dog has certain medical conditions or is showing certain symptoms, then vomiting can also be very dangerous. And this is most likely due to the risk of them inhaling their vomit into their lungs. That causes something called inhalation pneumonia, which in itself can be deadly. Other medical conditions can include laryngeal paralysis, so where their throat kind of structures are paralyzed and they're not able to what we call protect their airways to prevent that inhalation of substances. Also, if they've got reduced consciousness, if they're having seizures, or if there are other nervous problems, which are actually frequent symptoms of numerous different types of poisoning. And then there is also no point in making a dog or cat vomit if it is over about 2 to 4 hours since they ate that toxic substance. And this really is going to depend on what was eaten, what form it was in, and the amount of food that was already in the stomach when they came across this potential poison. Also, clearly, if they've already vomited because of that poisoning, then there's no point in making them vomit anymore. They're going to have emptied their stomach as much as they possibly can already. And then clearly the best thing to do is to actually avoid poisoning in the first place. And to do this, you should tap on this video, which runs through the 20 most common poisons for pets that are found in the house and garden. So tap on that video, make sure you avoid a poisoning emergency. And until the next one, I'm veterinarian Dr. Alex. This is Our Pets Health, because they're family.